This is the Team Objection podcast for October 22nd, 2020, episode 458. And we're here to follow through on the promise that we made last week with a bit of a twist at the end as well, in that we're going to talk about video games. It's never happened before on this podcast. But we're actually going to talk about the NFL first, which has almost never happened before on this podcast. A couple times. There was a Super Bowl episode and a couple other things, but...
You guys, Michelle Branch fucking rocks.
That's
I'm serious. I was in my car, and on the radio comes on a Michelle Branch song, and I was like, "This sounds like Michelle Branch." So I googled somebody who cares, and Paul McCartney showed up, and I was like, "Was her song a remake?" No, it wasn't that. And then I got to her eventually, and I was very proud that I knew just from the sound of it that it was Michelle Branch.
all you wanted was somebody who cares. And that's neither Chris nor I, so I don't know what to tell you about that.
Yeah, and then I went down the rabbit hole. I watched Michelle Branch videos. They're very 90s. They're a little strange.
This is why he was late to recording with us, Chris. This is why. This is why we started late tonight.
I just found Michelle Branch in my car, and I was like, wow.
Did you ever
she's
tie
so
up her?
good.
No, he means that she was literally in his car.
Oh,
I
that
know,
would have
that's
been
what
great
they
too.
tie her up.
I feel like Michelle Branch is the wife that got away. We're similar age. She went to NAU. I went to NAU.
Yeah. Yep, that's like Emily Stone for me. Emma Stone. She went to my high school. We're approximately the same age. Total wife that got away.
That's what I'm saying, man. It happens sometimes. Do you have a wife that got away, Chris? Or
No.
anyways, if you don't know Michelle Branch, I think you should take it upon yourself to look her up.
20 years ago. Sure.
Yeah, I have some fun facts about her that I'll sprinkle in throughout the episode. Don't worry. I don't want to spend the entire time on Michelle Branch, although I would.
So I find it ironic that Chris mentions that we're going to talk about the NFL. On the one day I decide to wear my Arizona Cardinals shirt, mostly because they, kind of showed the whole league like, oh my God, the Cowboys are terrible, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I actually just had that video last Friday on the channel that talked about like what was coming up and different plans and whatnot. And in retrospect, I was wearing a Cardinals polo. I just happened to wear that to work that day and then came home and did the video real fast. And it's kind of the same thing. I almost never wear that shirt because I don't really care about the Cardinals. I just had it because it was like cheap and I liked the way it fit. But now all of a sudden there was actually somebody in the comments who was like, so what do you think about the chances against the Cowboys? And I was like, well, since I know Dak's foot fell off, that's my football analysis. I guess we're going to win because he has no foot.
Yeah, but we're not here to talk football analysis. We're here to talk about how much we hate the NFL. Or at least I am. And boy, do I hate it. I think it's the worst league on the planet for its players. For a league that just doesn't care about anything but money. I introduced this last time, but you had the CTE thing. You have a bunch of players like beating each other and their spouses and their dogs, and no one cares, and they just cover it up. And now the COVID thing, it's like, we don't really care. We're not going to do a bubble. We're not going to really change much about what we're doing. We're just going to, as long as we can keep making money. And which is funny because I think in the long term, this is not going to actually help them make more money. But I guess we'll see.
So a lot of your arguments of your despise of the NFL, the COVID one, as far as a bubble, I mean, I don't know how you possibly have 32 teams in a bubble in a football practice situation. 22 teams in the NBA on small courts is much easier than 32 teams playing football. And a lot of your gripes as well, I will say, have been better than they ever have been before, whether it be concussion research or domestic violence. Like, a lot of the stuff that was really put in the forefront has gotten better in the past few years, I will say.
Oh, I mean, yeah, because they can't suppress the research anymore. What were they going to do? And then, I mean, the protesting, and now, I know they've kind of turned it around, but like in all the cases with the NFL, it's like they will eventually get there. They're like the parent or the kid where it's like, I'm sorry I got caught. Let me try to make up for it, and not proactively trying to do the right thing. They're always reacting. They're like super reactionary.
I think the problem with the league is twofold. It is a leadership problem because I think Goodell's a pansy. And I think it is also a problem with the fans. I think fans deserve their share of responsibility because they remind me of Wayne Knight's character in Jurassic Park, where you can put in like, the NFL is doing X, and he calls out to the restaurant on the patio, and then it's just pause, and he goes, see, nobody cares. And that's the problem, is that, Ray Rice is an example. There's a lot of examples, but let's just use Ray Rice as an example, where it's like, after the initial immediate shock had worn off, a few weeks later, it was kind of like, okay, but can Ray Rice contribute to his football team again? And it's like, is that really the first discussion we should be having? But I think it's a lot because of the fantasy nature of it, too. There are some people who don't care. They want their sports to be apolitical, and the NFL, because it won't take a stance on a lot of things, offers that. And for other people, they don't care because they just want to play fantasy and they have who they like, and they're not worried about the bigger picture.
I will say, for me, outside of a very, very light passing interest in the Cardinals, merely because of the hometown team nature of it, I would say without fantasy football, I wouldn't care about the NFL at all in any way, shape, or form. So
yeah, but I want you to hate it for the right reasons. I want you to hate it because they are a money first league. They don't care about their players. They're the worst.
Money first league. What league isn't a money first league?
Maybe all of them, sure,
all
but
of them are money first.
There's
like,
few that as brazenly wear it on their sleeves as the NFL.
And
there's few that will even not even pretend to care about the players or their fans.
Here's what's been difficult for me as a non-fan for the most part is the guaranteed money or lack thereof in contracts in the sport that most likely shortens their athletes' careers. And has the most long-term repercussions to them when they're done playing after their shortened careers. Those two things in tandem have always rubbed me the wrong way, even though all the leagues, like you said, are about getting these contracts bigger and bigger, and the percentage between the players and the owners, they're all the same in that regard, but none of them involve you getting your head beat in and then lasting 2.5 years in the league on average and then being thrown to the wolves.
Well, that's the biggest argument with the NFL, and really, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in that sense, is because you have so many players whose careers. I think the average career in the NFL is a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. If you take into account, all the people that come in as a rookie filter out. So because of that, the negotiation tactics of the losing an entire season, let's say, for a strike to get guaranteed contracts, nobody's willing to lose an entire season because it's too important to their long-term career for the fact of I'm only going to work for 5 years. And if I can make $5 million in 5 years, all right, I can't sit one of those years out, Yeah. Unlike the NBA, where you have 10-year careers much more frequently than you do the NFL.
And it's a shame because I actually wouldn't mind models that were a little bit more performance-based.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, anything that's performance-based is like a rider on top of a contract. If you're an MVP, you get an extra $500K, but it's not like your salary is dependent on it. There should be some guaranteed aspect, but it'd be nice to see that across the board in all the different leagues. Like, hey, if you start to suck, teams won't be stuck with this albatross hanging around their neck because they paid for something that didn't deliver or you got hurt or whatever. Now, that said, I also think you still have to have some money guaranteed. There are some people that would only want them to be paid by their performance and nothing else, which is a disaster because let's have them go do that at their job and see how they like it. But again, it just comes back to that short career, and hopefully in that couple of years that you only manage to stick in the league, you didn't get brain damage because you're not going to have a good pension, you're not going to have a good life for yourself when you're there, and then maybe you'll die early. Terrific.
Yeah, I mean, you write a movie about a NFL controversy, you get concussion. It's like this horrible thing. You write a controversial movie about the NBA, all you have is Space Jam. Because it's such a great league for its players. You don't have the same thing.
It's funny. I had somebody that I met years ago that had played in the NFL for 3 years. He went to college here in Arizona and then played for the Cardinals for a couple years. But why 3 years to be specific? Because after you've been in the league for 4 years, that's when you qualify for the pension. Mm-hmm. So a lot of players are out of the league unless you're going to stick. You're out of the league in 3 years, and they'll just bring in a new crop of rookies. And that's because there's not much differentiation really between the bottom of the rosters because it's just athleticism at that point, and maybe not as much talent and skill as the top tier players.
Well, and the same thing pairs in the draft too, where teams are often swapping like a third-round pick for a fourth-round pick and vice versa just because that extra slot means something because the talent pool, well, certainly better towards the top. I mean, you can find gems in the later rounds because they are so interchangeable. The elite talent in football, either because the gap is smaller and or because there's 11 players on the field at any time and not 5, and you don't even play on one side of the ball, it just doesn't make that much of a difference. So, I mean, they are a lot more interchangeable. In the NBA, that talent is not replaceable. You can't take a Moneyball approach to LeBron James and be like, all right, we're going to just replace LeBron with 3 other players that can kind of share his pool of abilities and then pay him like 1/10 the cost and it'll all be great. It never will work in the NBA. In the NFL, you can be like, all right, there are some positions like quarterback you can't necessarily hide, but you can have a 4th-string defensive back who is a 6th-round draft pick and just throw him out there and be like, all right, we're going to put you against their 4th best receiver and kind of shrug our shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's been interesting too to be like, look at the football rate, and I don't know how the football ratings are doing. I don't know if they're good or not, but they want to compare it to the NBA ratings, and NBA the lowest finals ratings, and they want to say it's because of the wokeness, and I would love to examine the Venn diagram of people who were watching the NBA, and then players got political, so they stopped watching the NBA.
It's small. Like
I cannot be super. My dad was like, "I'm never watching an NBA game again." I'm sorry, Dad. And I'm like, "Okay, oh no, they're gonna miss your 3 games a year that you used to watch when Steve Nash was on the team. What are they gonna do?" Or like Trump is like, I'm never gonna watch an NBA game again. And it's like, well, okay, how many were you watching before?
The demise of the NBA because of ratings is so widely overplayed. I mean, the NBA Finals was lower. Maybe because it was in October and no one's used to that. Maybe because of, people have their watching habits and this is not it. Like, I think that matters a lot.
Well, and there's so much other stuff going on. They're competing with elections. They're competing with other sports. Somebody brought up sports fatigue. And then a guy was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We didn't have sports for months and months and months. And it's like, well, yeah. And now we have multiple sports every single night.
Yeah.
And it's competing with the NFL and so.
And we're about to go into a desert of about 2 months where there's only football. And like nothing else.
Yeah.
No basketball, no college basketball, no hockey, no baseball, no nothing.
So this fucking douchebag, I don't know if it's Kobe Covington. He's a UFC fighter.
Mm-hmm.
He released I don't know his fucking name, and I don't care. Like taunting LeBron James, saying because of his wokeness, it's the lowest finals, and unlike UFC, which is just going up, like their bank accounts, and I don't know. I just think anyone who's giving LeBron James shit, he is making me a LeBron James fan, which I resent even further because LeBron James on the court, bothers me. I don't like the decision. He's supremely talented. I don't like his decisions. We've gone over this. But I love that of what he's been an advocate for. And if you're going to attack him for that, then you're forcing me to have his back. You probably don't care about me, but like I'm sure there are others like me that you're attacking a player for making a statement for something that's important to him.
What I find crazy about people's love of the NFL, because I mean, the amount I watch has waned over the years. Like, the farther it goes, the less I watch. Like, literally, the only reason I pay attention to it, like I said, is fantasy. And partially that's only because it's an avenue to connect with some friends and have something to talk about sometimes. It's just kind of a good way to stay connected. But what amazes me is the amount of people that don't care when the sport is bad and how they say they're never going to watch again and then they do. Like, the NFL seems to have this just bubble of invincibility around it. No matter how terribly they run the league, no matter how many scandals they have, no matter what happens, people still tune in. It's just crazy to me how, and I think part of it is the Sunday format where it's like, this day I can watch it and that's it. It's a routine for people.
Yeah, on a weekend day. And there's only 16 games in the regular season, and that scarcity, I think, breeds intrigue. And look, there are plenty of diehard NFL fans out there, so I don't really mean this as to be disparaging to them, but for all the casual fans, I think that stuff is hugely important. Because they probably don't care about the Thursday night matchup between 2-0-4 teams like we had last week. They probably don't give a shit about Monday Night Football. They got other stuff they can do on a weeknight. But on Sunday, they know, I'm going to go to church, I'm going to love my God, I'm going to love my guns, I'm going to drive home, and now I'm going to have 2 football games to watch all afternoon because that's what I want to do with my life. I want to watch football. And it's like, you could do that with any other sport, but do you want to tell somebody to watch 162 baseball games? That's 10 times as many. They're not going to do that.
every night instead of that one afternoon.
The amount of football games, so I don't really like football, and the amount of times that I've seen a football game with people who love football, and they're like, "Oh, fumble! Like you gotta tackle him." It's like they don't know anything about the sport, but they like claim it is a culture thing. It's cool to like football, and that annoys me too.
It is the easiest sport to watch socially, and part of that is the breaks in between. It's one of the slowest sports there possibly is.
Yeah.
And people call baseball that too. And while baseball is slow as well, in football, you play for 3 seconds and then you take 25 seconds, and then you play for 5 seconds and then you take 25 seconds.
That's what I hate about it, among other things.
And then a commercial break, and then you have a kickoff, and another commercial break, and then 3 seconds, 25 seconds.
It is so amazingly easy, though, to watch that in a group, because you don't have to pay attention for every moment like you would in a basketball or hockey game or something like that. And I think that's part of why it's so popular. You can tailgate before a game. You can sit there and drink beers and eat food and talk. And, oh, hey, shoot, I missed that play. Oh, well, let's watch the replay. Oh, wow, I'm glad that happened. Like, it's so easy to watch this game and not have to have knowledge in it. Oh, wow, look, he's running with the football. Yay. And that's it. There's nothing to break down.
I mean, this is a small gripe, but I feel like it's less interesting now than it's ever been. I know the running game has sort of been diminished. It used to be like a huge component. Now it's almost like niche for a team to have a really strong running game. More than ever, it's like quarterback. And that's fine. And maybe you can say the same thing about the NBA. Now in the NBA, it's 3-pointers or layups, and that's it. There's no more nuance in the mid-range, and fine. But for me personally, it's never been more boring than it is now.
Which is why that's funny to me, because there is that hypocrisy among fandoms. And look, maybe we're guilty of it at times too, but like for the most part, we see the bigger picture, because people will bitch about MLB's slow pace and then watch football. Or they'll bitch about the NBA jacking up threes, as you mentioned, and then they'll watch a quarterback throw the ball 55 times in a regular season game and be like, this is what I want. Even though they're the ones who, if you ask them, who would be like, I like smash mouth football. I want my guys to beat him on the offensive line and drive him down the field. It's like, well, if you're trying to throw the ball 55 times, that's not what you're doing.
Yeah.
So all of it is just like, it's conveniently ignored to suit people's whims.
And the irony of the reason that quarterbacks throw 55 times a game is because it's advantageous to them because of the concussion-based rules.
Yeah.
Because you can't hit a receiver over the middle anymore. So why wouldn't you throw it at 55 times a game?
And the analytics bear it out too. Again, that's the genesis of the revolution in basketball is, well, threes are worth more than two, so we're going to make the best out of that we can. Well, passing offense generally outpaces running offense in the NFL, so that's why teams are slowly moving in that direction, and why they're starting a little bit more often to go for two in spots when they should, or go for it on fourth down in spots where they should. Because even that league, as stuck in the mud as it is eventually undergoing change.
It's funny, Sean, that you say that, because actually the bit that I've watched this year has been more entertaining games than in the past, and I think part of it is because defense is so much run on practice. It is so, for some, like, you have to be so precise on defense, and because nobody had a preseason, because practice has been cut short due to COVID, offenses are scoring more, and it's kind of fun in that sense sometimes, especially when you're a fantasy football player. So
I wonder if we're gonna reach a point where like they have to change, like that. I mean, we're talking a long time, maybe not even in our lifetime, sort of long time, but like as players continue to get bigger, stronger, faster, are we gonna run into a situation where we have to take off like pads and helmets to prevent injury?
I've heard people say that before, where like, don't put helmets on them, so then they won't smack heads into each other, because you'll be wanting to, but you obviously can't do that because accidents happen. And
well, but no, you could, because like rugby, they have much more physical injuries, but not nearly as much like internal. And it's the same idea. I was talking with Mike about this, because that means anything to anyone. And he was saying it's the same as like boxing. Like when you fight someone with just your fists, you're actually going to do less internal damage than when you have that glove on, where it that transfer of momentum is just like really built into there. It's the same with helmets and all the pads. Like you can hit people so hard, and you're assisted by this by these like tools. If you were to remove that, Yeah, you're gonna get a lot more cuts and scrapes and all of that, but like you're hopefully not going to brain someone or cause it to swell.
But the issue is that you have an entire generation of players who've been trained to lead with their helmet as a good tackling form. So, I mean, you have to rip the Band-Aid off sometime to get that change through, but boy, those first couple of years, you're probably going to have a lot of head injuries as people go for moves without thinking and then ram their head into somebody's body.
But you're not supposed to, right? Like, I thought there was helmet to helmet, certainly.
Well, not with your helmet, no, but basically you're supposed to drive your shoulder through your defender if you're trying to tackle somebody.
Yeah,
and your head's right next to your shoulder, so you take that helmet off that people think is going to be safe, their form's not going to be correct.
I wonder what rugby does. What do you know? We're not really familiar with it. What's like the form of tackling in rugby?
The point, rugby is constantly moving. It's more like soccer in that sense where you never stop. And so because of that, you don't get those massive head-on collisions because everyone's moving around.
That's true.
Almost like gazelle type of thing. So you can't get those massive head-on collisions like you can in football. You know, a receiver catches the ball over the middle and he has to stand there to catch it. The defender sees him. Bam, you know, as opposed to rugby where, you know, you do short little tosses. You don't have those long passes in rugby. So that's part of the reason.
God. But I mean, yeah, again, like, are we going to see something to where like we can't just keep, you can argue in NBA, you keep getting faster, stronger. Maybe at some point you like raise the rim height. I don't know. But that's the type of drastic measures we're talking about in basketball. Football, like, what do you do to protect people?
You have to instill the next generation, and that's the biggest thing. Is the idea of anyone playing tackle football before high school is kind of stupid, really. Yeah. You can learn the majority of strategy of football by playing flag football. And you know what? I love playing flag football. I think it's super fun to play flag football.
I also enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty good at it too.
There's no reason. I mean, if you're fast, that's what matters in flag football. Now, obviously, you know, you aren't going to learn offensive lineman techniques, but it's not like people aren't strong when they hit high school. It's not like they can't learn how to block. I mean, so many kids haven't ever put a helmet on until they hit high school. So the idea of not playing flag football up until high school, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I don't see any point in having pee-wee leagues or that type of thing anymore where you put 9-year-olds in helmets and have them hit each other. That's
neither does like the majority of America, right? Aren't like the Pop Warner leagues like dying?
Oh, completely. And that's because a lot of moms, you know, they don't want their kids playing tackle football because they know of the dangers. So the NFL does have a problem coming up when it comes to that because they realize the next generation may not be the same as the previous.
Because there's been other movements in youth sports to take out some more dangerous aspects of it, not nearly the level of football where you have concussions and stuff with younger kids, but like there are pitch counts and curveball prevention in Little League now so that, you know, you don't have kids who need Tommy John surgery when they're 16 because they've already thrown their elbow out of place. Those measures at least kind of protect people from themselves, but this is the core component of football, is tackling. It's called tackle football on occasion. I don't know what you do to fix that other than maybe play flag football at a professional level, which is immediately going to turn out 35 to 40% of your fan base.
Oh,
just
if not more.
Boom.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Yeah. You can't move to that. And so, I mean, the only thing is really when it comes down to it, I mean, even high school is somewhat of a problem as far as these are just kids that are playing a sport where they can get hurt. College athletes, at least you can make the argument that they're getting something like a scholarship out of it. When you're in the NFL, all right, you can sign off on that. You can sign off, you know the risks type of thing signing off in the NFL, but the lower levels is where there's bigger issues when it comes to those.
I wonder in college how often, and I don't know this, so if I'm wrong, let me know. How often do catastrophic injuries happen in college? You heard about it in the NFL all the goddamn time. And that makes sense, though. NFL, you have all the best of the best, biggest, strongest, fastest people hitting each other. In college, I mean, to an extent, but it's certainly not to the same level.
Well, I'm playing 25% more games, too. I mean, that's an extra. College plays 12 games a year. The NFL plays 16. I mean, that's 4 more games in which to have injuries where you have some big 350-pound guy land on you and your foot breaks off.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of college games, you don't ever see anything like that. It happens from time to time, sure. I would even argue that on occasion it happens because of the lack of athleticism, where they have one of those components, like they're big, but they don't have elite speed like an NFL offensive lineman does, where you have these huge guys who can run like 4.7 40s. But they have lack of coordination at these, like what used to be D2 levels, the FCS level now. those things will still happen, but because there's so much less of these 360-pound behemoths who can come across the field like a tank, it happens less. But I mean, that's also true of like basketball too, right? Like, not as far as injuries, but you can see the diminished quality of play, the speed, the talent, the shooting, and that same talent dispersal is true at the college level because only 1% of those players or 2% are going to make it to the NFL.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like college ball because of that, but then other times they pass it around for 30 of the 35 seconds of the shot clock, and I'm like, well, maybe I don't like this anymore.
Two things. One, it's only 30 seconds now.
Oh, sorry.
I knew it was coming.
And two, it's funny not having my local, my college that I tend to care about, not having football this year makes me realize how much I can't stand college sports.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've watched more than 5 minutes of a college football game this year. And now when my school comes back, I probably will care a little bit and I'll want to watch them because that's like an internal, like I care about the school type of thing as opposed to actually caring about college football.
And since we're ranting on the subject, anybody who's a fan of college basketball and talks about the fundamentals of the game can also fuck right off. Just get the fuck out of here.
I've argued with my dad so much on this.
That's a non-existent. There's nothing to that argument. And here's just one way to debunk it very quickly. Why can't any of them shoot free throws? Nothing bothers me more than the fact that teams will start fouling with like a minute 40 left in the game because they know, A, there's the 1-and-1 system before the double bonus hits, so you have a good chance somebody misses the front end. They don't even get a second free throw. But even when they are in the double bonus, there's a good chance those kids are going to miss one of, if not both, free throws. Like nobody shoots more than 65% in college.
Yeah.
But it's fundamentals.
Yeah. It's one of those arguments where you can say you like college if you enjoy watching college sports more, maybe for the connection you have with your school. I can't argue with that. That's your opinion.
And there is sometimes a different passion at that level. There is something to that argument as well. I'm not saying there's no merits to it. I mean, we're all kind of in agreement on the fact that the NBA is way better. Yeah. There are certainly some merits, but it's like, don't come at me with weak-ass arguments for it. If you don't like the NBA because you think they're all overpaid and you don't like that they're black, then own that. That's fine. It's not really fine, but it's fine if that's your opinion. Don't hide behind this other bullshit when you have shitty opinions. Either own them or get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, well, I think I was one of those people once upon a time where I was like, look at college, it's so much more exciting. And what it was is they do have a more exciting tournament format. And that's it. And so people see that, I think, if they're like me and are like, oh, we need to find ways to explain why it's more exciting. Let's see. It's the team play. It's the fundamentals. No, it's just when it's single elimination and every game you're on the line, it is more exciting than the NBA playoffs.
When Murray State comes out of nowhere and you're like, who are these people? And you can jump on that train for no reason except for it's fun and only get the highs without the lows because you don't really care if they lose. It's super fun. It's completely super fun.
I'm not saying the NBA should change. Sorry, Chris. I'm not saying the NBA should change, but it is infinitely more exciting to have that one and done. You have things that can't happen in the NBA. You can't really ever have a huge underdog, or it's extremely rare in the course of history because of the 7-game or 5 games it was at one point. It's just hard. Usually the better team bears out over the course of the 7-game series.
And there's also the gap of the number of teams and the number of teams that make it. So like to Dave's example, like Murray State coming out of nowhere. I mean, even rabid college basketball fans may have heard of them a little bit, but they haven't watched a game. Mm-hmm. But nobody is that much of a rabid diehard fan except people who have money on college sports or fans of Murray State. You can't have that in the NBA playoffs because if the 8th seed is, this year, Portland, you can't be like, who's Portland? Where did Portland come from? Damian Lillard?
Yeah. It's funny to me too if you make that comparison like basketball versus football type of thing, how much people are willing to watch a crappy product when it comes to football but not willing to watch a crappy product when it comes to basketball. Like people don't want to watch college basketball is hard to watch sometimes because free throws, like you mentioned, Chris, people can't get wide open shots and can't shoot, that type of thing. College football, because when a defensive back screws up and a wide receiver gets open and scores, that's exciting if somebody screws up. It's harder to screw up on offense almost. So people don't notice crappy play in college football as much as they do basketball. So it's like people are more willing to watch it, I think.
I mean, that's the problem I have with the MLS is like I go from watching the World Cup and all of the pool play and all of that, and you go watch an MLS game, you're like, holy shit. I know it's going to be worse, but this is like, I could go out and do this, and I can't really, but that's what it feels like. It's bad. They need to up the talent, and maybe I think it's going to start happening slowly, especially as more and more people go to youth soccer instead of Pop Warner, but it's going to take a while.
I have one other tangent that I just thought of. Anybody who ever, if we're comparing college and professional, anybody who ever says the worst pro team would lose to the top college team can also fuck right off.
No, they can't.
You know how we know that's not true? Because we're Suns fans. And I've sat there, I think we've had this conversation off air, where I've marveled at the fact that the Suns, as terrible as they've been for the last decade, can generally hang with most teams in the league. We don't get beaten by 60 points by anybody, no matter how good the Warriors of 2 years ago were and how awful we were that season, which is probably the apex and the lowest point for both those teams. We beat them once, and they never really ran us out of the building. Nobody ever really gets run out of the building. You don't see these 70-point deficits like you do at the college level because the talent gap is so shrunk.
Mm-hmm. And the idea, and the other argument is the NBA, the worst team in the NBA has 12 NBA players on it. The best team in college has at most 4 NBA players on it.
Yeah, or like 6 if it's Kentucky, but even then their talent doesn't really work together as a unit, so it doesn't really show at that point.
Like, there's not even that argument. Every time I hear that, I'm just like, you don't understand anything, do you?
Yeah, like imagine, say the Suns did play down. I mean, we're not at the bottom level of the league anymore. We're moving up a little bit, but like, who the hell's going to guard DeAndre Ayton in college right now?
I mean,
who's going to stop Devin Booker? Like, forget Ayton, who is a physical freak and he'd be difficult. Who the hell's going to guard Devin Booker at the college level? This Devin Booker, a few years ago, maybe, when he was still kind of learning his way through the league, but he would straight up abuse kids.
Who's going to guard LeBron?
Yeah. I mean, the NBA doesn't have barely anybody who can guard LeBron. There's like a dozen people you could say are adequate LeBron defenders. Some poor, like, 6'2", 180-pound power forward at the college level is going to do something with fucking LeBron.
I like the idea, though, that once a year the best college team plays the worst NBA team, and if they win, I think they should supplant them.
Yeah, relegation.
Actually.
I think relegation is a fascinating part of the soccer experience.
I agree. And, I wouldn't even so much mind it. It'd actually be more fun in football because people are so rabid about football. It'd be so much fun to have, like, the Cowboys regulated to the lower division and just see the Cowboys fans cry for a year straight.
Yeah.
I'd scare that.
But what you do is you do it with the G League now? I always forget the name.
Yeah.
Is it G now? It was D? Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
You put the G League in the middle of it. So the best G League team gets a shot at the worst NBA team, and the best college team gets a shot at the worst G League team. And you just have this. So what does, like, North Carolina do if they win that? I don't know, but it's fascinating to figure it out.
Because you could have, in 2 years, you could have a college team enter the NBA that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if everything goes right.
And then all this, like, do you just have them take over that team? Do you send the guys on the worst NBA team back to college, even though they've exhausted their eligibility?
I like that idea.
If that actually happens, they're just out. Actually, they're just out of the league. Contracts, they're done because they get absorbed by the new team. So
and they have to sit out a year, and then the next season they can come back in as free agents.
Yeah, then go to the G League. Like, re-enter the G League and then try to work their way back. That's fine.
So this hypothetical, this year the Warriors were the worst team in the league. They were so beat up and injured that what if they did lose the G League team and all of a sudden Steph Curry and Klay Thompson?
I know. Well, that would be hilarious, but let's be honest. Steph Curry would have played more games if the Warriors were playing for anything that mattered this season. Yeah. Like, he was definitely arrested pretty aggressively because the Warriors knew they were screwed.
Yeah.
So, I think Curry would have played enough to get them to be the second worst team in the league if they needed to.
Maybe there's a threshold, like 15, 20. If you lose more than 20 games. No, wait, I'm sorry. If you win less than 20 games, is what I meant.
Yeah.
You have to be bad. Like, bad.
I mean, we learned from the bubble that play-in scenarios are exciting. Not just because it was Phoenix. Like, even the Memphis-Portland stuff was exciting because it was like, oh, shit, these are winner-take-all, like the NCAA tournament. That would also be true on the bottom side. If whatever team is playing for their life because they did... I like your idea because it's not just the worst team. It has to be below a threshold. But if you win fewer than 20 games, that activates, and now you have to play for your life in the NBA. That'd be great. If the Jets are 0-16, wouldn't you want to watch them have to play for their lives against Alabama? Just to see? I don't even care about football, and I'd watch that shit. I'd watch that before I'd watch the Super Bowl. I would also
watch that. Yeah, I would too. I would also watch that before the Super Bowl. That would be my marquee game of the year. Can the Jets remain a football team?
I just started this conversation. If you even entertain this thought, you can fuck right off. And here we are.
I know. We're entertaining crazy things because we dream of a world that's not the current NFL.
Yeah.
Man, I really do want something like a small tournament for draft picks, or to even out the bottom rank, or a play-in game if the situation's right. Like,
I think the NBA is going to be among the pioneers for that, and I think this pandemic, weirdly enough, has opened the door. If the next CBA, if they figure out a way to reduce that regular season workload, then that opens the door to do additional play-in things, whether that's for postseason rights or for draft picks, because they wouldn't want to add it to an 82-game slate. There are already concerns from players about injuries and all that stuff. But if the regular season is 66 games, I think the revenue opportunities and the excitement are there where both sides could actually find a way to do it. So now, more than this time last year, I would actually think more likely than not that could happen, which would be awesome.
Man,
Oh, yeah.
well, I mean, baseball did it to the wild card. Basically, they turned the wild card into a winner-take-all, which is baseball's the worst possible sport to have a winner-take-all because of the longevity of it. But
162 games and then 163 if you have like a weird starter in your rotation at that point because you had to play through the finish line or something, and then you're done. 162 game sample size and then one gone.
Yeah.
But then having that 8-9 matchup, if the NBA just did that, it's all. Take 2 games off the season. That's it.
And
Make
again,
80 games, 82, and do that 8-9 matchup.
Do exactly what you did this year. If the 8 seed is 10 games up on the 9 seed, there's no playing game.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't want to punish teams for having big gaps.
Yeah.
Like it has to be close enough to justify it. And if it is, great. And again, if not, even if it's like 7 through 10, same thing. Like Dallas was, 9 games up on the 8 seed. You wouldn't want to put them in that because there's such a gap there, and they earned that right not to be. But if they're 1 game up, play for your life.
Yep.
Well, I would play for your life, like even if there's like a small grouping, like this year, a bunch of teams right there.
Yeah.
Do another like mini tournament. That was the most excited, and I know it's a weird situation because I'm a Suns fan, and it was the most that we've gotten. But I bet you there were some, I don't know, Memphis fans who would probably agree this was the most exciting format that we've seen in a while. I don't think they were happy with the ending, but they were tuning in, I bet.
Yeah. It was, I would love the idea of like, if you're within 2 games, it's a winner take all. If you're within 4 games, the 9th seed has to win 2 games, that type of thing,
Yeah.
Maybe like you stagger it a little bit like that. Like you have to win more games, something to get in the farther back you are.
But I love the idea of like a tournament for draft picks too. Like, give them something to play for. I think they would. I think they would care.
And you sort of solve your anti-tanking measures that way too, because now every game does sort of matter. Now, granted, not a ton in the grand scheme of things, but you can't afford to rest players too many nights if you don't want to end up in some kind of logjam that puts you in these winner-go-home situations. Like, sure, you're going to give some load management of, a handful of games over a 66-game season, but you're not going to have your stars sit out 20 unless you're super good and don't care about positioning. If you're on the fringe, you got to play.
Yeah. It's, and I don't know about your draft pick tournament. The problem is that theoretically, if you win to get the top draft pick, you're potentially playing your ass off to draft your replacement as a player, which wouldn't go over well.
I mean, maybe, but you can't think about it like that. If you're that weak ass where you're worried that your draft pick is going to replace your spot, then you get the fuck out of here.
No, you wouldn't worry about it in the moment. You worry about that at the negotiating table for the CBA.
Well, but okay, maybe you do like a little money pot or something. I don't know. Do teams usually make money for going to the play? There's usually like subsidies and stuff that you get for good performance. I don't know if it's down to the level of if you make the playoffs, it's this much. Second round is this much. I doubt it, but
there's some incentives, but not. I mean, nothing that NBA players care about generally.
Yeah, I mean they always care. Remember they're playing for the money in the All-Star game. Second half is always about the money.
I have not heard that.
Are you kidding me? It's have you ever watched an All-Star game?
Not many.
Every time they reach halftime, they're like, yeah, first half was kind of boring, but we're playing for the money now, so it's going to get a little more exciting.
What money?
They get money for winning.
Nothing that they care about.
Apparently they do, Dave. For like every All-Star game for the past like 10 years, go watch it. I bet it'll all be the same interview.
But now it's for charity.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And as we talked about after it happened, putting the kids for those charities in the stands was an ingenious move. Better try your ass off. Timmy over here's got fucking chemo tomorrow. You better get your ass in gear.
So in the 2018 All-Star game, the winning team got $100,000 for each player, and the losing team got $25,000. If you're an All-Star, come on, man.
Yeah,
You
but
don't
as
give
bad
a
as all these
shit
guys
about
are with money, they're better now than they used to be,
Yes.
and there are certainly exceptions to this. But that's still an influx of cash for the people who can't say no to their circle of friends.
I'm telling you, Dave, I didn't pull this. We're doing it for the money this half out of nowhere. I didn't make this up. I got it from the players after seeing interviews every year.
Money on three. 1, 2, 3. That'll play well in the State Farm game audio assist.
Dave, it's because you're not an actual NBA fan.
Wow. Harsh if true.
That is the single rudest thing you've ever said to me in the entire run of this show.
Well, if you were waiting for video game talk, I lied to you in the intro. I'm sorry about that. I feel terrible. You got baited, but we tricked you into listening to a very lighthearted sports discussion.
And
so.
I promise next week we will. I'm actually excited. I have some weird games I've been playing that I want to share.
Are we going to do that next week, or are we going to talk about the election next week?
Nah.
I don't know, man. I guess it depends. If Trump wins, what do we have to talk about again?
Well, it's before the election, so that would be why we would do it then, as opposed to trying to fit it like Wednesday when we can't do it.
I don't know that I want to talk about it.
I don't know if I want to either. I have a lot to say, and I don't know if I want to say any of it.
Well, I think we said like a lot in the build-up. I don't think anyone is curious as to where we stand, except a branch of America that agrees that Dave is a closet Republican.
A Michelle branch of America.
Less closeted Republican.
There were no
maybe.
fun facts, but I still brought it full circle.
Yeah, where were your fun facts, Sean?
I bet you Michelle Branch is a Democrat.
She's everywhere to me.
Do you know she's married to the lead guitarist of the Black Keys?
This was my fault. I opened the door, and I made a mistake.
They're married. That's crazy.
Probably video games next week. Then that's probably where we're headed. Yes.
I mean, we can talk. We'll make it a game time decision. If we want to talk about the election, we can. But
yeah, I guess we'll find out at the start of next show, or will you? Maybe
Yeah.
I'll say one thing and it'll be another. You don't know.
Was Trump faking COVID to get out of the debate? That's what I've been reading lately. So I don't know. I don't know what we'll talk about.
Mm-hmm. It's a mystery. That's why you got to tune in every week. That's the end of this episode. In between shows, you can find us on our website, objectionnetwork.com, or on youtube.com/objectionnetwork for new videos 7 days a week. See you next time.